Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read 3 scary stories from r/letsnotmeet. Let's begin, shall we? Our first story is from Snoo Peripherals. Creepy dude on the trail. It finally started raining here, so I took my son, 14 male, out mushroom hunting over the weekend. It was later than we normally go, and the sun goes down much earlier, but we were taking a quick trail to the river and back in hopes to finding turkey tails or chanterelles. We took a wrong turn and ended up going through a big field, which the trail would take us back around to the main trail to the river. As we walked toward the main trail, the last group of people had left, and it was just me and my son. We walked along, and out of a thicket-side trail came this weird man. He had a dog with him that was alert at his side. He was staring at us, so we walked closer towards him. Then he started waving at us. This really weird, slow wave. I was immediately uncomfortable and goosebumpy, but I didn't want to be impolite, so I half-hearted waved back while staring back and telling my son to slow up a little. I didn't want to actually meet up at the junction. After a full minute of us dawdling, the guy slowly turned and began walking down the trail toward the main trail. I was wary walking and didn't go too fast, and we stopped to look at some plants. So the guy and the dog got further down this trail, which curved to the right and continued on 2 blocks to the junction. I was thinking, if this was a creepy Let's Not Meet, this dude would be waiting around the corner. And sure enough, he was standing right at the junction, off to the left and toward the parking lot. And to the right was a 0.6 trail to the river. Dude was just standing there with his dog staring at us, not moving at all. Both my son and I were like, let's keep wide to the right, and saying he looks odd. We could run faster than him and just generally planning for freaky deaky just in case. He kept staring at us, so as we approached, I asked if he was okay and kept staring back. He was greasy-haired, tiny round glasses, a blue windbreaker, plaid long shorts, about 50 years old. His dog was a small beagle mix. He didn't answer me at all, just kept staring. We turned to the right and walked about a block. I had my phone cam facing me, so I could watch him over my shoulder, and the only movement was him slowly shifting his direction to continue staring at us. I didn't say anything else to him. It was just his moderately unsettling stare, made more so by his lack of response. Motionless face, weird tiny glasses, slow wave at us like a zombie. He did leave because on our way back he was no longer standing on the main trail. So, hey, freaky deaky forest zombie dude, for sure stay in the thickets and let's not meet. Our second story is from Lyrical Lotus. Random man tried to get into my car late at night. This happened about 10 years ago. I was in graduate school at the time, working on my master's degree for clinical social work. My practicum was at a confidential shelter which housed women and children seeking shelter for domestic violence. Since I was an intern, I worked a lot of late-night shifts. After closing up the shelter, I headed home. It was after midnight and the roads were fairly empty. I lived in a smaller town at the time, so this was not unusual. As I approached the red light, I noticed a man a few yards away, walking toward the crosswalk. I suddenly felt very anxious and had an unsettling feeling, so I immediately locked my car doors. This was before I had a car with automatic locks. I usually drove without locking my car doors as I had never felt unsafe while doing so, I felt better having locked my doors and pulled up to the red light. Staring ahead, I noticed the man never crossed the street. I glanced to my right, where I had seen him earlier, and came face to face with his face pressed up against my passenger side window. I screamed, honked my horn, and told him to go away, but he continued standing there, staring right at me. Then he tried the handle of my door without success. I continued screaming at him, honking my horn and waiting for the red light to change. The man straightened, stepped away from the passenger side door, and moved quickly to my driver's side door, trying the handle again, but without success. He stood with a wide stance next to my car as though he was lunging. At the moment, I thought to myself, screw it, and slammed the gas to run the red light. The man kind of stumbled when I did this, and I think I ran over his foot in my escape. When I arrived home, I woke up my husband to tell him and called the police. Police never found the man, but by the time they sent someone out, he was gone. The police officer did commend me for running the red light, as well as for potentially running over the man's foot. So, to the creepy man who tried to get into my car in the middle of the night, let's not meet. Our last story is from Bossy Boots. That's not my friend in the woods. I grew up out in the wooded country in Illinois, on a short, dead-end street 10 plus miles from a town. And there were 7 houses in the area, spread out on 2.5-acre wooded lots or larger each. There were no large wild animals. There aren't bears or similarly large animals in the region, and people didn't meander there or show up lost. Actually, lost folks or large animals wandering around never happened in the 20 years I lived there, so please keep that in mind. When I was a young girl in my early teens, I had a good guy friend a few years older than me who lived next door, Terry. Terry was allowed to go out with his friends much later than I was, and he would sometimes tromp over to my yard after getting home late and throw rocks from the gravel area outside my window to chat. My bed was right next to the window. I'd open the window and we'd whisper some stories and generally talk for a bit. My second-story window faced our backyard, and his house was to the side. I could see his house from my window over the shrub trees and walking the path to his driveway. I'd often know if he was out. The light was on over the side door entrance. Or already home, light was off. One time during the summer, when my window was open, I heard a car in his driveway dropping him off. I was probably 14 years old, and it was around midnight. I heard Terry get out of a car and was talking to his friends. Soon his friends pulled away. I softly called out as loud as I could without waking my parents, asking Terry to stop by and chat. He didn't respond as he probably didn't hear me. Then I came up with the not-so-brilliant idea to sneak outside and scare him. I'd spent many years in the woods and learning how to blend in and be silent. As kids, we'd often sneak around and scare each other. So I silently sneaked down from the second floor and out my back garage door, which led to our backyard below my window, which led to Terry's house off the side through our gravel area, then through a well-worn path through the woods about 25 feet long. My parents had put a gravel pit around the back of the house, probably because nothing much grew due to the shade of the oak trees. There were 14-inch oak rounds set out as an uneven stepping path in the gravel, and if you stepped off of the rounds, the crunch of the gravel and the rocks would give you away. I picked my way expertly and silently across the log rounds facing Terry's house. My eyes got accustomed to the dark, and I didn't see him. Also at the time, I heard the door of his house close and the light going off, signaling he went in, likely to bed. I waited a bit, as I thought I saw something move in the woods between our houses, but not on the path we'd always use. If you didn't use the path, there were wild rose and raspberry bushes that had thorns and were painful to walk through if you weren't careful. So I thought it was odd that he'd be in the open woods, but maybe he wanted to scare me like I was plotting to do to him. But I saw something human-sized and dark moving through the woods, slow and pausing every once in a while like me. It was coming closer, and I definitely saw it. But it was strange in that it wasn't walking directly to my window to talk. Therefore, I hunched down and waited in silence, wondering if I could still startle him. I still thought it was Terry, and he saw me sneak out, and he was trying to scare me. I watched a dark outline of a human figure moving, but then I would lose sight of it in the foliage. It seemed to be stalking slowly and listening/checking every few feet while hiding. So I whispered, after losing patience one last time for Terry, but he didn't answer. I got bored of hiding and crouching, so I quietly tippy-toed back to my garage door and went back inside, silently locking up as I went. I snuck back upstairs to my room above the area where I was just standing/crouching. My window was open, and I definitely heard someone or something walk around the yard. I whispered again for Terry out my window, but got no answer. Then I heard someone or something fall and grunt or moan pretty loudly in the window well, right below my window. It wasn't enough to wake my parents, but definitely loud enough I didn't mistake it, and it sent a shock of fear through me. If you aren't familiar with a window well, it's a semicircular hole connected to your house dug out about 3 or 4 feet deep, reinforced with metal. It allows a basement window to be put in below ground level, and the hole lets some natural light in. There is no way Terry would have fallen in our window well. We had been playing hide and seek and many outdoor games for years since we were young, around the whole neighborhood. We knew everyone's window wells and house footprints, plus paths in the woods, like the back of our hands. The grunt sounded humanish and not like an animal. It also pulled itself out quietly without a lot of thrashing. That's when I realized that this wasn't a fun game, and someone or something was out there, and it wasn't Terry. I tried to look outside my window as best I could, but there was a screen on my windows to keep the bugs out, so I couldn't lean my head out the window to see next to the wall of our house directly below me. I then heard the crunch of rocks, as whatever it was stepping in the noisy gravel. Terry would know where the log rounds were and would not step in the gravel. He knew my parents were pretty strict, and he was as good at being quiet as I was. Whatever it was stopped, and I held my breath. I pretty much sat there with my face pressed against the screen 2 stories up for probably half an hour. It seemed like an hour, but I'm sure I didn't have patience back then to wait that long. I never heard it/him/her leave, but I grew tired and eventually fell asleep on my bed that was next to the window. There are a few things I'm certain of. 1, it wasn't Terry. I asked him later, and he said that he went to bed that night when he got home. He also would have no reason to lie. 2, I'm pretty sure this wasn't one of our neighbors, and I can't think of any reason a person would be there. We had few neighbors, and only 2 other houses out of the 7 had kids. Again, these 7 houses were spread out in 2.5+ acres per home. 3, there weren't any big animals in the area. As wooded as the whole area was, we only had some deer, but they were hunted and didn't come close to the homes. Plus, our dog scared them away. Stranger in the woods? Let's not ever meet. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. The stories in this video were read with the author's permissions. Want to support me? Check out the link below where you can leave a donation. Thank you again for listening, and be sure to check out the original Reddit posts. Don't let the shadows get too close.